Good evening. My name is Joe Sam Robinson. It's my pleasure to have with us Mr. Harry Gross. Welcome, Harry.
Thank you, sir.
Now, Harry, you're a man of many parts, and one part of your education and experience has been on international affairs. Is that
Yes,
right?
sir. Yes, sir.
So, and you received a graduate degree at the University of Georgia.
Yes, sir.
In that field.
International policy.
Yes,
sir.
okay. And so maybe we could talk a little bit about the world order, whatever that is. So I'll sort of set the stage for a little bit. So the way the world appears is each part of the world had its own little separate ecosystem. Let's say 2,000 years ago, 1,000 years ago, people were isolated on the planet, quite isolated. The level of urbanization was different, the level of everything was quite different. And then the transoceanic travel took place in Western Europe. The Chinese may have touched at it, but they really took off. So Western technology, viewpoints, and power went around the world. And they pretty much, by the end of the 19th century, the world was colored with the same colors as European nations. They had colonies, they had this, and they had that, and you could say the world order was centered in Western Europe. Not totally so, but pretty much the decisions were there. The U.S. was in a peripheral situation. And then just to cut to the chase, all these tremendous events took place, particularly the world wars, particularly World War II, particularly the destruction of Europe, and the inability of the European powers to maintain their control of the great swaths of territory under their dominion. They just couldn't do it. They didn't, for many reasons. And then the East is red. The communist countries came together. A third of the world was whatever it was under communist domain. There was I would say the Western third, and then maybe the non-allied nations, the other third, and that's the way the world was. Then the Soviet Union blew up, if we could say that, and there was a period when pretty much and I think maybe Bush used the phrase the New World Order,
Yes.
meaning that the Western ideology had triumphed, and that we have this system where a lot of American values were out there as the currency of progress. So capitalism, we could say that. We could say the democratic system. We could say the concern over abuses of power, the idea that everybody needs a bite out of the apple, some kind of general fairness doctrine, war is bad. And the way the New World Order would work would be through the United Nations. They would stop war. The power of the West would do this. The U.S. would be there to help things out. And that's the way it was for, shall we say, a decade or two. Now, is that even a useful term to use? What is the situation like now in regards to whatever we would call the world order?
I mean, we still have the last vestiges of that, but we've now moved from this brief moment of what we would call unipolarity, where the United States was the sole dominant superpower in the world system, to we're now a re-emerging period of multipolarity, which is a quite different system than we had even for the 20th century. The back end of the 20th century was defined by bipolarity, right? You had the United States and its allies and the Soviet Union and its allies. And kind of everybody else had to pick a side somewhere in the middle there. And if you weren't picking a side, you were playing each side off the other.
Yes.
The world previous to that was defined by multipolarity. You had the great power system. You had Great Britain, you had France, you had Russia, you had Austria-Hungary, you had Germany, Japan, all with different spheres of influence. And we're now returning more towards that kind of time period. Largely, it's a tripolar system between the United States and its allies, Russia and its allies, and China and its allies. But even that's starting to break down as the United States has kind of done its own thing and is moving a little bit towards more isolationism under the Trump administration. And you now kind of have an emergence of the United States plus Europe as kind of this weird hybrid, plus kind of Russia to some degree, but China largely taking on an even larger share of the world order in its appearances. We're still bound by common institutions. We still have the United Nations. We're still bound by the WTO, by the International Court of Justice, these kind of other things, but there are varying degrees of authority to all of those. And largely all those institutions relied on the support of the United States to function. And as the U.S. retreats more from global leadership, those institutions become less and less powerful.
Well, yes, indeed. And so I would possibly make the case that it was a good thing for the U.S. and their institutions to have this preponderant influence in the world. I think that was good. And this influence was paid for with war, with suffering, with money, with all kinds of issues. And the extraordinary, greatness of the country happened because of the humans that live here and the sacrifices they made. And they had this situation where a lot of their dreams were in the process of being fulfilled, I could say that. Mm-hmm. But right now, particularly after the Soviet Union cracked up, maybe I've said these stories before, traveling to other countries, how much the rest of the world looked up to the U.S., our model, the way we did things. Mm-hmm. We were really sort of early Christians, so to speak, people looking at a moral nation that was successful, wealthy, pleasant, nice, all the good things that were here, and many people wanted to live here, all the extraordinary good things. That situation is rapidly changing under the present political circumstances. So I think the voice of America has maybe been turned off or down. And one of the issues that, for better or worse, gave the U.S. a lot of influence was the universities. So giving visas to people to come, and the great power of American universities, how well they did. And a lot of it was the idea of not having rote memory. You don't just, many countries might do this. Here, memorize these 15 things and recapitulate them. Well, at least I think in many ways, the academic circumstances in the U.S. encouraged free thinking. The hierarchy of the professor and the student was less obvious here. There are a lot of ideas. Let's encourage people to do this. Let's do that. And that was a really good thing. So many students came here. The universities did good things. The economic arrangements were quite good here. So the most innovative companies were happening. The new ideas were coming out of the place. And our partners, I think, had no reluctance in walking in our trail. They, well, look how great we'll follow their leadership. And in many ways, I think the leadership has been sacrificed, and a lot of it might be not unexpected. So a lot of the power the U.S. had to direct the world order came from its access to innovation, science, ideas, patents. In many ways, protected the issue. And China is this a country with a long history, at least 5,000 years, 1.4 billion people, really smart people, an academic tradition of great excellence, going through this just unbelievably horrible century, recovered. Well, let's see, what's the name of the magazine? China Reconstructs. You ever read that?
No.
No, I did as a young boy. China Reconstructs, and it was their propaganda magazine about how well the Chinese were doing. But they really, really were just pounded around, and then suddenly they got the idea they could have a quasi-capitalist system, and they could easily harvest all the intellectual property the West possessed.
Yep.
And apparently, that goes along with some of their Confucius ideas. It would be really evil to have a good idea and not share it. I guess that might, that would be my understanding of a lot of the Chinese viewpoints. So patents are something doesn't seem to comport with their system. they're able to get information and really do something at 1.4 billion people. They also had a sense of scholarship. They could send people to other universities. They could pick up with ideas. They would be bright. They would come back. The government would arrange for them to run with it. They also opened the gates for young people to come in. So there's pretty much in most circumstances in China, there's a mandatory retirement at age 60. So, you're not going to hang out for long, and you might have this brilliant decade after you come back, and then someone else will have their brilliant decade. And so they've really assembled this extraordinary ideology, idea, system that is changing the world order substantially, in my opinion. So there's you mentioned monopolar, unipolar. I certainly think the U.S. is surrendering its global leadership for no good reason. I would say that for no good reason, and one of the most substantial reasons this is happening is the idea of tariffs. So we're going to injure all these countries in the world. We sort of talked about that earlier. That have labor advantages. They have very inexpensive labor. We're going to nip them close, and we're going to try and transport those jobs to the U.S., and there will be a part of the U.S. population that will get some benefit. Someone is going to get some benefit here out of this change in policy. But one part of the neglected equation, it's the impact on the world order. And the world order is really, really a good thing. It means that our planet is going to do well. We won't kill each other so easily. There'll be a lot of shared prosperity. Maybe we'd like to say a sense of brotherhood. We'd like to say all of those things. But the in group and the out group, those ideas still are there. So a monopolar world order, it means that you're not going to have any obvious enemies there. It also means the idea of nation states are diminished to some degree, which I would be in favor of a little of that. I mean, the U.S. has a special role as a nation state, but really aggressive nation states bumping against each other as a good way to destroy the species, with nuclear weapons. Well, that's some of the things that I think are difficult. How could we construct a world order that would be for the common good? I'll put that in you.
It's always hard to build something new. Than reform we have. What we had was pretty good. The United Nations is not really good at preventing conflict. It's pretty much failed in every single effort. At that point, the only time it ever sort of succeeded was in Korea, and that was only because the Soviets just boycotted the whole thing. But what it has done really well at, and what the UN really excels at, is public health and international economic development and trade. And those are the areas where the United States has fully withdrawn from some areas. We are trying to leave the WHO. China is now stepping in our place. We've killed USAID. And China's going to step in to some degree, but they can't match the funding. And as a result of USA programs, unless equivalent aid is, exactly reconstructed, we're looking at 14 million people over the next 4 years dying because of that. That's 2 Holocausts.
Well,
Almost 2 Holocausts, right? Because we decided we didn't want to fund a couple $1 billion a year to this program. What we can do to really build a good world order would be to emphasize economic development, one, which is because if you want to do with migration, right? If you want to do with the issues of immigration and migration, make it better for people to stay in their own home countries. Make it so that they have a future there. It's a lot cheaper to invest in developing El Salvador than it is to deal with deporting people to a concentration camp in El Salvador. Well, in that sense. It also means that there's less conflict, right? When people have full bellies and a good future, they are much less likely to want to try and fight their neighbors.
Well, they still, the idea of that's hardwired, instinctive, unfortunate part of our
Yeah, but have you
species.
tried swinging a club when your belly's full? It's,
Well, after you've rested a little bit, and if you don't eat, you may be too weak to swing a club. Well, one of the issues out there is I talked about nation states, and the question is, what are the role of nation states in the world order? And the idea is that, these nation states are all going to be okay, but they're not, and they have all kinds of destructive DNA. So you pick your nation state. We could pick El Salvador. So you have this history of the big dogs and the little dogs. Mm-hmm. There's a great tension. The economic circumstances are not optimal. The people in control preserve their power viciously, I would say, the opportunities to rise in that circumstance are not good. And that's, I think, pretty much a normal human instinct, is to try and, if you start out as a little dog, maybe be a slightly bigger one, so to speak. I mean, and so all these chances to do something are not good, depending on the country you're in. And the fragility of the country is so extraordinary. If the people that are in power, they just try and hang on. I mean, there's no way I can do. The problems are so extraordinary. There's nothing I can do, but I'm in my palace, and I'll just try and hang on. And there's a huge part of the world that's like that, a huge part. So maybe you could say there are 10 or 20 countries that maybe they somewhat have their act together, not totally, but millions and millions of people don't live there. And the birth rate, for instance, in sub-Saharan Africa is extraordinary. So that many, many people are growing up in these defective countries, I'll use that phrase, and you could say the developed part of the world, the population is either stable or diminishing. And so that all the people in the world, the preponderant number of them, are going to be in these difficult places. And the sign of dysfunction is war. I mean, that's really, people fight each other, the civil war, fighting, and can the world order correct these issues? How do you correct that? And do we require sort of a Julius Caesar kind of person to dominate the world? Do that? Is that the only way we can do it?
I wouldn't say that's the only way we do it. Historically, we've gotten closer with that, yes. But it's never lasted, and it's always been incredibly bloody and brutal. The advantage of the UN, if we could reform the Security Council, that would actually...
What would you do about that?
Get rid of the veto for the permanent 5 members.
Would you add some more members?
Add some more members.
You want to toss the Brits out?
Yeah, or no, let's not toss the Brits out. But the sense of when the United States can, on its own veto any resolution put to this, even if it's unanimously approved by the rest of the Security Council.
I mean,
so can Russia, exactly. That's my point.
China.
That was why the UN failed to prevent most conflicts in the 20th century, was because the Cold War meant that the United States could stop anything that was good for the Russians could stop anything that was good for the United States, and their petty rivalry, it ensured that millions of people died in conflicts that might have been otherwise prevented. It's the way that one of the ways we reduce conflict is by promoting repeated interactions, because reputation matters. In the international system, if you have to consistently engage with other people and your neighbors, right, you are far less likely to treat them badly. This goes not just for the international, this goes for any system, right? The more you interact with somebody, the more you care about how they perceive you, in the sense that you at least don't want them to think you're a terrible person. Well, you want them to treat you well.
In Gaza, they interact. So
the thing is daily interactions. Well, if you actually look at daily interactions between people who live there long enough, they've historically been fairly nonviolent. Violence erupts typically when new actors come in, which in the West Bank would be settlers typically, or when there's something to gain. But in the sense that in a system-wide level, right, you get better reputation, you get better relations when you have consistent interaction. In game theory, we talk about the prisoner's dilemma, which talks about how do you get cooperation in an endogenous system where you can't talk to anybody. The only way you get a system where cooperation ever wins out is if you have an infinite number of iterations, if you never know when it's the last time you're going to interact with somebody. And forums like the UN provide that level of theoretical kind of interaction in a real format, right? You get people in a system where there are real consequences if you misbehave. If you violate a treaty, there's going to be some consequence to that. Now, the Security Council, being as kind of problematic as it is, has lessened those consequences, right? To the point where oftentimes you just get a strongly worded letter from the UN saying, hey, stop killing people over there. But the more teeth that system has to enforce those rules, the more likely people are going to play by the rules.
Well, do we need some powerful actors there? And so one of the...
You do.
So it's quite complicated, I would say. So humans being what they are, there are many, 150 nations, whatever.
193 UN members, I believe.
And many of them are de minimis. Their systems are whatever they are. Their people are there, and they're self-interested. The people that are in the political system are really quite self-interested.
Yep.
They're doing deals. They're stealing money. They're doing what? All these things are going on. The aphrodisiac of power, all the stuff that's happening with all this, humans being what they are, it's not an easy problem. I mean, I've made the reference to the way the brain is constructed. I think understanding human nature, to me, is the sine qua non of getting some kind of appropriate world order put together. So this is the way humans are. This is the deal.
Yeah.
This is what's up. And the issues, for instance, human dominance. So everyone wishes to be dominant, though they want their kith and kin to be dominant. That's a hardwired idea, I think. And then people will do whatever they can do to accomplish that. And that means injuring other people, doing this, doing that. And so understanding these human fallibilities, I think, would be a first start toward things.
Well, there's a start.
And for instance, just the difficulty in doing things. So could the world order or any government sort of enforce, let's say, something against U.S. policymakers? So let's say, I don't know, we could say the Democrats, well, what crime could they have committed? They, I don't know, they did something to someone.
We drone strike some kids in Yemen.
Right, okay.
The Obama administration did that every day.
So you did something, or whatever. You kill people or somebody, anybody that's in a position of power can do that. And so, all right, now we're going to arrest you. We're going to come in, or soldiers. Their soldiers were there. Maybe one with a Purple Heart and maybe a Silver Star, and yet he killed people as he was frightened. His nerves were bad. And he thought his first sergeant was threatened, and so he just executed 20 people with his M16, whatever. I mean, all these things are there. Could we accept some kind of external organization coming in and cleaning the Augean stable, so to speak? Could that happen? I don't know. It'd be very resistant to it.
Yeah, we would have to construct a totally new level of sovereignty and understandings of sovereignty, because under the current global system and the current world order framework, that's not possible.
Well, and so how do you hatch out? So how do you hatch out when the world order is really talking about the control and governance of the 8 billion people that are there? The control and governance, which is getting progressively more difficult. What are you going to do about that?
Yeah.
And the population is increasing. Also, the other card in the deck is the AI power that's hatching out under our eyes. I mean, this is going like a rocket ship. So we might be, 5 years, 2 years, name whatever you want to say, about the ability of AI to just control things. And also, we talked a little bit about the tariffs, whatever, in economics, but the AI may well make a lot of human activities unnecessary. That's going to disturb the issues. And change is like a Bunsen burner for the world. There's a Bunsen burner under it, which is the extraordinary change we're seeing, which is very destabilizing. So what we're really talking about with the world order is saying we're going to put a political system in place which will minimize human conflict, pass out the blessings of what our brains can do around the world and solve all, at least make an effort to solve these issues. And that does that require power that we're unwilling to give to anyone? I mentioned, could we accept, let's say, some external organization coming in here and arresting whoever you wish, a soldier with medals medals on his chest. We're arresting you for war crimes, and there was let's see, there was a former congressman here that was maybe he signed on. He was on a commission that looked into I don't know whatever war in the Middle East, and he suggested giving somebody arms. He said, well, let's give. Whatever the compete, we'll give the Islamic world arms, or we'll give Israelis, or whoever will give arms to, then that decision injured people. And so it depends on how you want to define.
Well, it depends on the global legal framework. I mean, that last one's not illegal at all under any international law. The former is, in the sense of war crimes or violation of Geneva Conventions.
So the thing, yes.
But in the sense that, I mean, I think there's going to have to be some give and take on something like that. You're right that there are certain aspects of sovereignty that are non-negotiable for states. But there are other aspects we are going to have to surrender some degree of control over to deal with collective action problems, right? We see this with climate change. We saw this with the pandemic, where individual states act in ways that hurt the rest of the world and require a global consensus to respond to correctly. And it's going to take giving up some level of sovereignty, some degree of authority over our own states to make those problems solvable.
And so do we need something like, I happened to channel surfing, I saw Failsafe again, which maybe I saw it 30 years ago, but it was an interesting issue. Things are going to blow up or whatever, and the plot was both New York and Moscow were destroyed by this terrible accident. And then now people can repent and say, well, now we're going to never let this happen again. Do we need something like this for people to really get on the same team? One of the issues that's out there, I think, is with, let's say, the climate and the Amazon and cutting trees in the Amazon, or as far as that goes in South Georgia. I mean, well, I'm going to harvest I've got some trees on my land, and it's time to harvest them. And well, if you did that, we're going to put you in jail because the Berlin can't handle it or whatever. And we're going to just restrict your economic reality. We're going to, because it may be personally good for you, but someone has decreed this is in general bad. And that may be the fundamental ethical dilemma that's out there, is that there's a hierarchy of interest or right and wrong. So for you personally, right and wrong is tilted this way. For your family, it's still tilted that way. And if you say, well, there's somebody in Aborigine and the Australian desert, it's far away from what I would account about right and wrong. And I always count more right and wrong for me or my family or our nation, and then the other places are we don't do that. And it's extremely difficult to change that idea. Very, very difficult. And that goes for religious issues, all kinds of issues, and that's what it would require. So it might require something that's impossible for humans to accomplish. And if that is the case, inevitability, we're going to have some terrible disasters in the future. If we can't, we're unable to take those steps. I mean, you'd say, well, climate change, okay. I'd be, maybe people have nuclear weapons, are going to blow somebody up. So that's certainly a possibility. Well, do you think the UN can work?
I think it can. It needs some tweaks, but I think it can.
Who do you think gets to go to the UN? I mean, how do people get there? So that each country has their own system by which they let that happen. I
guess. I mean, in the sense that, we have once recognized members of the UN, their members and their representation are duly elected by their own or appointed
yes.
by their own countries. we're a long way away from something like a united Earth government.
Yes.
But at the same time, we desperately need to come together in ways and change the way we see people. The gospel lesson yesterday was the Good Samaritan, right?
Yes.
And the end of that parable, the point of that parable, right, is that our neighbor is everyone, right?
Yes.
That definition of neighbor is incredibly expansive. And if we want to survive as a species and build a sustainable world order, we need to build it on a concept of a neighborly relationship that sees every one of the 8 billion people on this planet as our neighbor and not just our kith and kin.
Well, just so. So thank you, Harry, for your insights, and we'll talk some more. Thank you.
Yes, sir.